what we're going to do here is, I guess really I got to thank you guys for coming. You know, that's a huge thing that we're doing here. We are the Granite Mountain Hotshot Center, and we know kind of why this center is. Anybody not understand what this center is about? Okay, okay. So I'm going to have to kind of stand someplace because we're videotaping this that somebody else might want to use it or whatever. I think they have something that'll black my face out and they'll put somebody else in and it'll work really well. So we're going to go ahead. So we came up with the idea for Fireside Chat, and we're going to talk about Prescott, and that's kind of where we are. And this is a bigger thing, you know, like Ron, he has the whole county, you know, with Poway. I mean, you know, Sedona, everywhere in there. So this is kind of for them too. This focus is kind of on Prescott a little bit, but this is one of three things we hope to do like this. So we're going to talk about our biggest hazard. We're going to talk about the wildland-urban interface where we all want to live, or we do live currently. We're going to talk about things that are being done now to kind of mitigate that threat or that danger. We're going to talk about extreme fire behavior, a little bit about Yarnell Hill Fire before and after, and we're going to talk about who's involved in reducing the risk of wildfires currently in our area. And then at the end, if we could, we'll hold everything to the end. We'll have questions and answers. Does that work for everybody? And we have some experts here, not just me. Pete knows more than I forgot, you know. So, but I mean, you know, we have a lot of folks in here that can help answer questions. If we can't answer your question, I have got cards up here. I'll give it to you, and send me a little email or a text message or something with what you want to know, and I'll find the person that knows it, or I'll go find it out myself. Does that sound like a deal? Okay. Right now, Prescott's kind of the general area around here, population over like 47,000. That's a pretty big group, isn't it? And so it's been steadily increasing. When I went in the Marine Corps in 1971, there were 10,000 people in town. Prescott Valley didn't exist. The mall, this here, wasn't here. I used to ride my unicycle from Mount Vernon Street to Lynx Lake. And coming out this way, you're going pretty slow on a unicycle, so you see there's just not much there. And now it's just packed everywhere, the ranch, everything. And so this is kind of a regional trade center. You know, Jeff Mature we were talking about. I used to meet him at Costco because they didn't have a Costco in Sedona. So he'd come in, his wife would say something to me and say hello, and then he and I'd start talking. His wife would just give up, and she'd just go do the shopping and then come back and say, okay, it's time to go, Jeff, come on. So that's why, Dennis, do you have that sign? If you guys look back at Dennis, he's got a sign there. I'm Irish, and there's no such thing as a short story. So that's to keep me in check, so I cover this stuff today, okay? The biggest risk we have here, guess what it is? Wildland fire. And we have a community wildfire protection plan. Pete's been involved in it. A lot of folks that are here have been involved in it and really understand it. But it kind of started with Poway early on. They kind of funded the first one we got somebody to actually make. And then they gave it to me for a while, and then luckily we got some more people that are more competent, that now it's really a whole lot better than it was. But mitigation of, we're going to mitigate the risk of wildland fire in this area. It's a big thing. We're going to protect the folks that are out there doing the work, make sure that they're all right, and we're going to take care of the citizens that are impacted and involved there. Identifying funding needs, provide opportunities for collaboration. I'll tell you what, we were talking earlier, but this area, Pete, a bunch of folks got together. We collaborate with everybody here better than any place I've ever been. Now, and I'm not saying this because it's my hometown and my home county. I'm just telling you that as I travel around and work fires around the United States, I've never seen a better situation where people are willing to cooperate and work together for the common good than we do here. What's a wildland-urban interface? How many people live in a community where you've got a lot of trees? Or anybody live in Timber Ridge? That was the first fire-wise community in the United States, Timber Ridge, out Copper Basin. So we all want to live here, right? That makes sense? And Prescott's my hometown, so I'm pretty invested in here. You guys are living here. You're pretty invested too, aren't you? It's pretty important to you. I put my notes on my tablet so I could, make sure I cover this. So it's just basically where people, I think Pete and Celeste saw this more than most folks. You see it. People living in the urban interface near the national forest, state lands, the same kind of thing. So it's really nice to be there and work in it, but it's got some hazards, and what we need to do is be aware of that and figure out what we can do to kind of minimize those hazards. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what we're talking about today. This is just to kind of wet your whistle. This is not the solution and everything else today, but it's just to kind of talk to you about stuff. Now, wildfires, they can start anywhere. Pete, 9 fires on 69 started right there in not Black Canyon, Cordis Junction, and went into Cordis Lakes. There were 9 fires that day with a guy just dragging a chain behind on a trailer. 9 fires. I don't know for sure, but the Viewpoint fire, more than likely a chain or something was dragged there to set it on and took off. And I mean, it moved, didn't it, when it went through there. So unintended campfires, I don't know how many times, somebody just walks away from a campfire. The Goodwin fire was an example. They found the campfire. It had already gotten out of the campfire. They almost got around it, and an oak bush blew up, and then it was off to the races. But it started from a campfire. So we got people doing kind of things that are really kind of hurting us. That make sense? Natural causes, we get a lot of lightning. There's a lot of lightning strikes, around here. Yarnell was dry lightning. There were 11 lightning strikes or 11 fires when the Yarnell Hill fire happened, and so a fire in Kingman took precedence because it was an area where people were being threatened, houses and stuff were being impacted. So what do we do? If we live here in all this wildland urban face, what do we do? Defensible space. We use fire-resistant materials when we're building the place, reduce the fuel load, tell the people what's going on like we're doing right here, and develop an evacuation plan. So laser, animal disaster services, that's all part of that evacuation plan that we have here. I go to New Mexico, go to a bunch of places, guess what? How are we going to evacuate these people? Well, I don't know. Well, hey, this is not the time to kind of try and figure that out, That needs to be ahead of time. And so you resort on law enforcement and liaison officers to go evacuate, like Jacobs Lake. Telling people, hey, you need to get out of here, the fire's coming. You need to move. So, but these are all kind of components. Does that make sense? What's out there? How many people know this fire? This ring a bell? You heard something about it? So I've got some facts here. So it started on January 7th. How many people thought that fires would be burning in January? Really? Pete says, I know, because I've been on a bunch of them. But it's year-round now. There's fires going on right now as we speak, as we're sitting here. It used to be way, way back, by August, end of August, you could pretty much, teams start saying, well, I'm not going to go out anymore because, there won't be that much going on. There might be a couple of them, but not many. That doesn't happen anymore. So when that hit, it took 24 days to try and contain that fire. So it burned for 24 days. Santa Ana winds. What do you think those Santa Ana winds were? How many miles an hour do you think that was? Yeah. Even more. Like hurricane force winds coming in. And I got something here at the end that's 12 people passed away in that fire. And it destroyed 6,837 structures. It just wiped out the town of Paradise.
Yes, I didn't interrupt, but I lived there, like probably some here too. Every year we had Santa Ana winds.
Yes.
All the time, any time of the year. It's not like it was a big surprise.
Right, yes.
And they don't do the maintain the forest there either.
Right.
So they're not prepared for anything like that.
If you drive to Groom Creek or you drive out to Lynx Lake, look at the side of the roads on both sides. The forest has gone in there and put projects together where they went in and they thinned that stuff out. There's a real concerted effort to try and do as much as we can with the money that's coming in here in this area. That's another great thing about where we live. So this was a pretty bad deal, wasn't it? I mean, especially if you live there, and now you're here, and I know a bunch of other folks that are here now because of this. So the campfire, Pete knows all about the campfire. That thing was just incredible, and this is the one that got the town of Paradise. I misspoke, but this campfire evacuated 52,000 people. Well, that's a lot of animals and horses, isn't it? You know, could we take that scope? 85 people lost their life on that fire. I would hate to anything to happen to you guys here. You know it? And so this is, like I said, this is just kind of to prime the pump to get you to start to thinking. And what's weird is we have a lot of the guys that have been thinking and working and active in some of the things that we do here are here in this meeting. And there's some other folks that I don't recognize, and you're probably involved in a lot of things, you know, that I'm unaware of. I retired from the county in 2019, and then I just started working wildland fire, and pretty much, you know, through each season. And I was very fortunate to 80 with the Prescott National Forest and go to Washington, Oregon, all over the place. So I've seen a bunch of it. Pete's seen a whole hell of a lot more than I have. Pete was basically the fire chief of the forest here, and he started out as a hotshot and worked his way up. You know, so there's some expertise. So when we get to these questions, don't rely just on me. Let's talk to some of these other folks here. They'll get you some really good, solid answers. Yarnell, that's why we're here. That's why the center's here. Small fire, $800 million worth of loss on that fire. Almost $1 billion. Yarnell was unincorporated, so it had no local government. And so now we have this huge tragedy that happens. But we also lost 122 homes. And so it's kind of like this room here. Let's just say the first 3 rows of this are gone, and the rest of you are here, and you're paying taxes, and you've got a fire district, and you've got a school district. Guess what happens? You don't have enough money to pay for those deals. You've lost a big portion of your income. So it took 3.5 years, 7 days a week for me and my boss and a bunch of folks working down there trying to get something back. We were able to build some homes, able to get some people to move back in. And it's still, that economy and stuff is still not back where it was before the fire. And we talk about, you know, how you prepare, what you do, how you mitigate, how you kind of lessen the impact of fire on your community. Look at the vegetation here. Look over here. If you took an aerial photograph of that shortly after, and I've got some, you could see where the really heavily vegetated areas around homes and stuff, that's why those homes went burnt to the ground, down to the foundation. I saw the biggest manzanita bush I've ever seen in my life there, and it was just a burnt-out stump that was sitting there. But it was on a guy's front porch. And manzanita, man, that stuff burns. It has its own oil in there. It generates the fire. So what we're kind of talking about, what we're kind of priming the pump for is what POWIC does. You know, we're talking about how do you mitigate, how do you protect your property, how do you protect yourself? Even to the point of you got to get out of here, you got to evacuate. How are you going to do that? What are you going to do with your animals? What are you going to do with your horses? You know, those types of things. This is pretty important stuff. You think? So who's involved in this? Well, I'll tell you what, I got a guy that I know, and so I'm going to say Prescott Fire Department. That's where Granite Mountain came from, and they did a lot of mitigation work around here. They did a lot of things where got around a small fire and sat on it overnight and made sure it didn't take off anywhere else again. I mean, they really did an incredible job. And the idea was for them to be here year-round. So they'd always be here to kind of protect. And then it would also give them some income where they could work year-round. And so it was working that way. Dennis was involved with them early on. Pete was involved with them early on. You know, as they were building the programs, you know, still trying to come up. So Prescott has a big stake here. And they've got Conrad is working for chief now, and he's doing a pretty good job of getting that message out. And you guys in the media and, you know, getting information out, John, and your team. So you're really doing a good job. But we still need to keep working on it. We still need to keep doing it more. Prescott Wildland Urban Interface Commission was that's where you guys started, Ron. Now it's Yavapai Firewise because it incorporates all around the county. There's money available that you can go to and get to do the initial clearing and stuff of your property. You know, they'll help you with that if they can do it or not, if you're a Firewise community. But if you're a Firewise community and you got 6 people active and you got 400 homes, you know, we got to work on those other 400 homes, right? Okay, so, I mean, Firewise is a great thing and we really do a great job here. We were the leaders on putting this together and stuff, but we just need more and more people involved to kind of give us a fighting chance to be able to do the job. Prescott National Forest. Pete, I can't say enough. Our relationship as I worked here, the things that you taught me, the stuff that you helped me with. The Prescott National Forest, when I went out on wildland fires, they were my boss and they took care of me. They paid my taxes. I had a check in my checking account when I got home. They paid me for my expenses. It was just a really great experience, but it was the same experience that I had the whole time I got to work with all you guys. And so I'm eternally grateful for that. Just a great group of folks. But they really care. The Hacienda project, there's a bunch of different projects that they're working on to kind of thin stuff out and help protect homes and create a natural, healthy forest. You know, I've been to Oregon. I'll use Oregon as an example. The trees are so close to each other, you can't get a helicopter to drop a line through to pull a guy out that's underneath them, you know, to take him to the hospital because he's injured. And while the helicopter's up there rotating, that fire's getting fanned and it goes from a 50-acre fire to a 500-acre fire in just no time at all. But it's the vegetation. And there's a conscious effort here to work on that. State Forestry even gets involved and does some stuff down near Wilhoit in there. And so State Forestry, which is Arizona Department of Forestry and Fire Management, they help. They work hand in hand with POWIC on a lot of stuff. James Robbins was a great guy to work with. I mean, they've had some really great people that have come here really engaged with POWIC trying to make things better. So there's another resource for you. You know what that wind is? Can anybody pronounce that? Okay. So I found that. And Pete's talked to me about this. Darrell Willis has talked to me about that. One of the biggest concerns that we have here is a fire starts at Wilhoit and gets some wind pushing behind it, and it comes over the top of Ponderosa Park and drops right down into the basin. Does that sound kind of like paradise? You know? Get up on top of Iron Springs, go up pretty high, turn around, come back, and just look. It's like, I thought we were doing good, you know, but we got all this stuff. We got all this stuff we need to work on. Does that make sense? So, anybody have any idea what the highest wind was here in Prescott? Weather Service tells me that in January of 2022, it was 82 miles an hour sustained wind at Prescott Airport. And hey, I'm going to tell this real short story. Look at he's got it up there. So my mother tells me my father is older and his health is not great. And so he's sleeping, and he sleeps basically in briefs and a t-shirt. That's probably more information you need to know. But I have this picture of my dad outside taking care of this awning that's on the back deck of the house, and he's out there trying to hold it on while this wind, a big haboo came through and took it off the porch. And he's standing there holding basically on the fabric of it or whatever. So I have this picture embedded in my mind of my father, you know, like in his 70s out there dressed accordingly, you know, pulling that off. But we have those winds here. And so if we get an ignition point, where's it going? You know, Prescott Fire Department, they had to kind of justify their existence a long time ago. Daryl got a guy to come down from Boise, and they did a study, and they modeled what fire would look like if it started down in Wilhoit and came into the basin. And those things are, I've seen them, and it's pretty horrific, the kind of things that would come in and the force. Daryl told me that he thought that we'd probably be fighting fire in Chino Valley. That's where we'd be cutting fire line. So the potential's still there. And so all these things we've talked about today, we've talked about, you know, what's happened, how deadly these fires are. We've talked about mitigation, we've talked about POWIC, we've talked about animal disaster services, we've talked about laser, and all these things we do here, the Jeep posse for evacuation and stuff. Can you see we still have a lot to do? You know, how many people are set up to evacuate right now? They have a to-go box with all their stuff in it ready to leave. Oh, very impressive. That is. Yeah. Me, I just moved out of my apartment, moved in with my sweetheart when we got married, and I got rid of a bunch of stuff, so I don't have much to pack. I gave all my fire gear this year to my nephew, you know, so he'll have stuff. So I don't have that to pack. But thinking along those lines and getting ready and preparing and thinking about those things, talk to some of these folks here after we finish here, and get some ideas of who you can talk to. And I've got my cards up here. If we can help you in some way, I'll get you an answer. I'll get you somebody that you can talk to and get some stuff done. So did this prime the pump today? Did it make sense? Okay, it's kind of quick and fast, and they only gave me so much time. And luckily, Pete, Dennis has that sign, so it'll kind of keep me in check, so I don't have to say a whole lot. But, you know, I've been involved in POWIC a long, long time. Right, Marty? Marty got tired of looking at me. You know, he's just kind of like, geez, you. Yeah. I know maybe a lot of other folks did too. But I can tell you, this is my home, and this is your home. And so Prescott Valley, everything else, man, you just, my boss is holding the sign up now. I'm in trouble, John. And so kind of take this stuff to heart. Start thinking about what you can do and what kind of information you can get. And the best thing is get other people involved. You know how that works? We get the 10% that shows up for something like this, and you guys can work on the 90% that didn't show up for this. You know, kind of get that word out there. You know, it's kind of like, you know, you're talking to the preachers, you know, or talking to the choir, you know, that hears it all the time. But, you know, I see a lot of faces, and I see a lot of memories here of people that have come and helped and done a lot of things over the years, and I'm really grateful for those friendships and the stuff that you guys did. And Kathy, you got to keep smiling. Makes everybody wonder what you're up to. Okay, so now let's go to questions. I'll start here and work my way back. How's that? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, hi. I'm Andrea Sansone, and I happen to live right down the street from John Marsh.
Oh, is he a good neighbor? Is he behaving himself? You know, he gets out of hand sometimes, you know.
No, not
John. Okay.
But moved into the neighborhood, Pronghorn Ranch in 2015. Mm-hmm. Was it?
We were trying to think about when it was. Yeah. Pete, do you remember?
Mother's Day.
Yeah.
16?
2018 was the viewpoint. Was it 2018?
2018.
Really?
Well, you know, if that wall that was built around Viewpoint,
right,
that kind of deflected some stuff. It could have, without that there, that would have been a little more interesting.
The point is that I did not, and I started as a first responder before some of these people were born,
Mm-hmm.
and went into dispatch, and I worked at 911 for LAPD for 32 years.
Wow.
And so I've been at every command post for every natural, man-made disaster.
Sure.
Riots, all this, a lot of fire command posts. And had I known there was only one way in and one way out of that area, I probably wouldn't have not bought a home there, frankly, because
yes.
I looked at the map, you know, it looked so nice, all those roads, and it turns out that those roads are private property.
What's funny is a lot of them aren't private property.
So,
people have just fenced over
so
the
what
areas.
can we do about
That's
identifying
my suggestion would be to talk to the Prescott Valley, talk to the council, and talk to the county commissioners and see if you can get, and emergency management, and see if you can get them on board. We fought that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I also happen to be newly elected to the fire board.
Oh, cool.
So I was sworn in December, so I'm very
congratulations.
interested in getting all of these things, you know.
What a great thing to have you on the fire board with your experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, we were talking.
so-
Ron is, you know, same thing. He comes with a ton of experience, and he's worked on the, you know, Sedona Fires board.
amazing.
And so, yeah, that's huge.
So-
I know somebody else that did something like that. I can't remember the guy's name, but I can see
Well,
him from
that's
here.
what I think we need to focus on things like that for that particular
Yes.
area inclusive.
Sure.
Because ingress and egress was very, you know.
That's true.
tenuous
That's
because
true.
We have county area,
Mhm.
a lot of people coming down with livestock, RVs, this and that. I kind of argued for them to put Parkview through at that time, and they,
Okay. Can you give me, can you send me a text message or an email or something? And what I'll do, I'll get you the contact information for those folks, okay?
perfect.
And then we'll get it started and let me know how it goes.
Thank you.
I think you had, I'm working my way back. I'll be,
I'm Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
I've had first-hand experience with fire that came 10 feet from my house, and you just never get over that crackling noise and the smell. But my question is, well, at that time, all the planes were in storage. It took a long time to get air rescue.
Right.
And we were pretty much on our own fighting it. What happens if something like that comes, God forbid, in this area? Where are the planes located, and are they ready to go? And, you know, what kind of help do we get?
I know a guy that he's been to the top of the mountain, he's managed all that, and now he loads planes at the airport. Pete?
I heard you talk about rescue, but are you referring to the air tankers, the retardant planes?
That or water, either one.
Yeah.
What kind of resources do we have around here?
Okay, the air tankers themselves, those are a national resource, and they are private, all of them are private contract planes, mechanics and air, and pilots. And most of them are federally managed, either under, well, they all are under Forest Service contract. There are some state contracts. Washington, California has several state contracts. Again, all contract, although CDF, I think, has their own pilots. To answer your question, where are they? There's a finite resource. There's just not endless supply. And they move around the country where the need is. And right now, and that's getting tougher to determine. That need is throughout the season. As you pointed out at the beginning of the discussion, it's year-round. So don't be surprised that we're having fires in January. There are several in Southern California. There are several, I believe, in the southern tier, because this is their typical fire season. So the southern U.S. from Texas all the way to Florida. They can be mobilized to wherever the need is, and they're all jetted fleet, by the way. So any pictures you've seen, history you have of the old prop planes, the old bombers, the old P-3s, don't exist anymore. They're out there, but they're not on contracted fleet anymore. All of our fleet is jetted, including the big DC-10, which gets all the publicity. And there are several of the DC-10s now, all by that company. Right now, there are none sitting in Prescott, but around the 1st of May, the Prescott Air Tanker Base will open, and we will have at least one, probably assigned to Prescott, but again, it's not anchored here. If there is a dire need in southern Arizona, Utah, Colorado, that's where it's gonna go. There's a whole nother lecture we could give on what national resources and the mobilization of national resources. But we are blessed to have a tanker base here that even if we don't have one sitting here, we can get them here at 300 miles an hour. They won't be far. They'll be here quick. And as having a tanker base here, we can reload and get them out. And as someone that does it, proud to tell you, about 11 to 12 minutes. From the minute they pull in to the minute they're on the runway leaving, about 11 to 12 minutes.
I can't even do that at the price when I get gas in my car.
We like to think, though, the other tanker bases can do that too.
Yes. Thank you.
Go first.
You're a gentleman, thank you.
He is, City.
Okay, this one.
She did.
I just jumped right in.
Contradicts that as his wife.
Oh.
You're in trouble.
Okay, this might sound like a silly question, but we live over in Pronghorn Ranch. We heard about the Blue Point fire in 2018 before we moved there. As opposed to Prescott, which is the forest. it just, because we're like prairie, is it easier to put out a prairie fire? Because it seems like it's more like, or is there so much fuel from that dry grass as opposed to forest fires?
Well, I think the thing that drives it.
Yeah.
She's asking if it's easier to put out a fire with just grasses versus the heavier timber that we find in Prescott.
Pete, you wanna come up here? We can get
Sure. They just,
we got my spot.
I don't want your spot. I think, and of course, there's some other experts in the room, but generally speaking, I think the answer is yes. My entire career, I would much rather have the advantage in a grass fire than brush or timber. And frankly, I'd rather have a timber fire than a brush fire. And brush, I'm talking about the chaparral right here, Southern California, Palisades fire, the, what was the fire, Altadena fire, and a lot of our Prescott fires. I would much rather have a timber fire. But grass, generally speaking, is easier because, first of all, it is a lighter fuel. It doesn't hold the heat. Once it's done burning, it's done. So it doesn't hold the heat, but it obviously moves very fast. It moves faster typically than a timber fire. Often it's in, well, I shouldn't say that. I would say it's in, here anyway, it's in flatter, easier to get to country, but that's not always the case around the country. But and we can use mobile equipment pretty quickly. And talking about aircraft, if I can just put a little plug in, there, I think, due to media sensation, and like I said, we already see the DC-10 when that came on board about 15 years ago, that's what gets all the limelight. And I think we have done an injustice in educating the public, generally speaking, across this country to think that they're the savior, that the air, you know, all we need is a few air tankers and these fires go out. That is just not the case. Those air tankers are really ineffective unless there's troops on the ground to follow up. The retardant dries out. The retardant can blow away when it's a windy day. We need folks to follow that up. So they are a great tool and a great asset, but they're not a standalone asset. It's a big misnomer, I think, and we've done in the media, not a good thing. In grass fires, they are tremendously effective. And you can actually get away with using an aircraft in the grass sometimes without having follow up with troops on the ground. But we would never do that. Somebody's in there making sure the black is still black, no hot edges.
Pete, you didn't follow up. You talked about the fixed wing, but you didn't talk about
Rotor wing.
locally.
Yes. So I know, well, you might be able to speak to this better, but I understand there won't be a contracted helicopter this year. Ordinarily, the Prescott National Forest, so you're what John was having me go back and talk about was rotor wing, the helicopters. There are a few levels of available helicopters. One of the things we do nationwide among many state organizations nationwide, but all of the feds. There are 5 federal agencies mandated to protect our public lands from wildfire. And just about all of those have what we call exclusive use contracts. And these are contracts, some of them are very long, some of them are year round, some of them are short periods of time depending on typical fire season. And that is a contracted aircraft, again, with the pilot, the mechanic, the fuel truck, and the aircraft itself. And they are assigned a specific duty location. However, unlike the national air tankers that can be moved around, local units have much more control over these exclusive use contracts. And Prescott, for a lot of years, has had a contracted aircraft, and it's here for about 3 months, and sometimes that gets extended. And it is staffed with agency personnel, managed with agency personnel, and really under the leadership and the decision of the local agency. So the Prescott would have a lot of say in whether that helicopter stays here for the in case moment or could be available to help other neighbors. The next level, we call these call when needed helicopters, and it's a national contract, but they don't necessarily have a set period. They're given more time to respond, and that's kind of our backup. That's the dugout. That's we can call those folks when we need them. But then, much like the air tankers, we have national Type 1 contracted helicopters, and these are the big guys that you see. The big sky cranes with the snorkel hanging down, the stuff from the movie, the big twin rotor Chinooks, and some other interesting aircraft. But all of those, most of those heavy lift are national contracts. And much like the air tankers, they will be moved around and pre-positioned and then positioned to where the need is. And sometimes that's a commitment to an ongoing fire. Sometimes that's just a commitment to where the most potential is based on conditions. So thank you for reminding me of that. So we have both the rotor and the fixed wing at various levels.
Yes, sir.
I have one of those 4x4s, UTVs, and you see it Lowe's, the Hisson ones. And sometimes I go on the trails, and sometimes I have to turn around, and I have to go in the brush a little bit, turn around. And I'm always worried that because those engines get so hot. Have I got to be real careful with that?
Am I taking this one too? All right, all right.
The question on it is.
I just like listening to it.
ATVs and off-road type vehicles getting out in the brush and not on cleared roads.
Right.
And what's the hazard there?
So first I'll take this quick tangent and get right back in. Don't do much cross country. You shouldn't. It does damage. Even with the low pressure tires, it does damage. I'm an off-road enthusiast. I have a big tribute truck I built, and I stay on the trails unless I need to turn around or back up. Yeah. To answer your question, the first advice I would give is just don't modify your exhaust system. And a lot of people do that, right? You want to get more performance, more noise out of the thing. And some of these guys that are building race buggies and things, modifying the exhaust and removing some of the spark arresting equipment or changing the position above the ground, that's a problem. I think generally speaking, if you are just turning around and not stopping on the grass, you're very unlikely to cause a fire. If you stop and park, you're a little more likely.
Yeah.
Where we really see the problems is like as we talk about chains, dragging the chains because it's throwing a spark, non-spark arrested exhaust systems, and then really hot exhaust that sits in a very dense clump of grass. It's not, frankly, that easy to park a hot car you just finished driving and start a fire. It really depends on how much grass you're sitting on, but it's something to be aware of for sure. So I think you're all right just making the quick turn and not modifying your exhaust. Yeah.
Thank you.
I just have a real quick question. It's the same as Andrew. We live in Park North also. How do we find what our evacuation route is, and for us to share with friends, how do we tell them to find where they live?
The question is how to determine basically the best evacuation route for each neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so,
You can do a couple of different things. You can get a hold of Yavapai County Emergency Management, express your concerns, and see if you can get somebody to come out there and listen to what you have to say, look at the area, and then work with the the town of Prescott Valley, and come up with something that works. I'll give you a card, and if those guys don't seem to get your way or whatever, then I'll be happy to kind of help you find the people that you really need to talk to.
The other thing I was thinking about is with that neighborhood, there's, I don't know, 500, 600, whatever thousand houses in there now.
1,340.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're all coming out the same road, but
Sure,
if we did
sure.
some kind of a package in the clubhouse, this would be your evac route plan, this is what you need to plan to take with you, or something like that.
So I'd like to answer that since I've been on this since the Viewpoint fire. And the clubhouse said that's the city's responsibility, and the city said that's the club HOA's responsibility. So I have scoped a few things out, and we can talk after. And I'll tell you where I'm going to go. And then after that, I'm still working to try to do what we said about getting those incorrect fences down. And
Good.
We plan on just taking.
We're looking for a place to get out on the Viewpoint fire, and me and Brandon Van Horn, we kept running into fences everywhere we're going, and
I guess I was just whispering in John's ear, and I'm not being facetious, but in my four-wheel drive truck, I carry bolt cutters and fence pliers.
amen, brother.
I'll apologize afterward.
See, I'd like to identify the things that aren't gonna let people's livestock out.
Sure.
You know, because sometimes it is private.
And contrary to popular belief, the cows most of the time will be okay. They're gonna get out of the way. Well, you can probably speak to that better than I can.
In regards to what Lisa was just asking, the town of Prescott Valley has just recently hired somebody that is going to be working on our evacuation route.
Oh, wow.
Well, because of the one got backed up, and they were for miles, you could get out.
Right.
On this brochure, it says you can be involved in this bullet points as organize a group of volunteers who can help forest regular clear brush, pull invasive weeds, or assist with other tasks? I want to know who to talk to. My community would love to do that. And I also, about your question about the evac route, I live in Highland Heights, so I'm up there.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So, when a new person moves in, they get a little welcome packet. It's got the evac route, we have two, one on each side, and they're marked with bright yellow squares that have a white E on them, so you can easily find it.
Yeah.
And we give out brochures about how to firewise your place, and whatnot. Yeah, but I want to know who to talk to about that, because my community wants to do that.
You thought you were getting away.
So much for being just an observer.
We'll let John have some comments, and then we've got two more people that want to share. And then we're just about out of time now.
I don't think I need that. The question was how the brochure says you can help the forest, remove brush and stuff. We don't use a lot of volunteers. We mostly use our hand crews or our engine crews to do that work. We do accept volunteers. If you go to volunteer.gov, there's many opportunities out there. If your community wants to do something with us, like urban interface stuff, I can give you my card and we can work something out.
Cool.
Okay. Highland Pines, yeah, we're very familiar with that. Had a fire there.
Okay, we'll do one.
Okay.
Do one more and then.
Just one quick little comment, because Hugh had mentioned Animal Disaster Services and Laser. They shelter the domestic pets, dogs, cats, rabbits, birds now too, right? We shelter the barn animals, horses, goats, pigs, chickens. A lot of people have chickens now.
Llamas and alpacas too.
We do llamas and alpacas. Yeah, we don't do cattle as a rule, but we will take, if you have a 4-H project in the backyard, we will do what we can to accommodate that. But what I just wanted to say was that it's not just about the animals, it's about the people who love them. It's about a plan in place so you can evacuate quickly. So Lisa and ADS and Laser will come to your neighborhood, will come to your clubs, your HOAs. We're more than happy to come and make presentations. We also promote emergency readiness, and we have some tips. So come and see either one of us later on, and we're more than happy to schedule something. Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
I'll ask Mr. Soder to come up, share a few words, and then Pete Farrell from Fire.
Thank you. My name is Dave Soto. I'm the board chair for the Yavapai Firewise. I just took over that position January 1. Been on that board for the last 2 years prior to that. Prior to that, I was the board chair for the Sedona Fire District for 6 years, and then 3 years before that, just on the board in general. And then even before that, 35 years as an LA City firefighter. And so this little grass fire they had in Palisades and Altadena, yeah, it was a good going fire. So, but we see a lot of that here. We have the same terrain, we have the same plantings, the low-lying trees. We're not talking the big, tall pine trees. What they have different than us is they're down at sea level, basically. And they have this little thing called Santa Ana winds that just blows like crazy. We get our wind gusts. Believe me, we get our wind gusts. And most of my affiliation, I'll put this down right here, has been, for the most part, in the Sedona area. And I was tasked with the job of finding out for my HOA where I could go to find out information for our homeowners as to how we could protect ourselves. And I found this little program called Empower. And I guess you could say it's kind of in my blood in that this is kind of neat. Even being in this room is kind of neat because I can identify with every one of these t-shirts and every one of those faces over there because I've been in those positions. And it is a heartfelt It's hard not to get emotional in this room because of what's out here. You guys are so lucky to have this. I'm sure every one of those firefighters are appreciative that it's here. So with that said, Prescott Area Wildland Urban Interface Commission was tasked with the job way back when in 1983, when we had fires coming through on Plum Butte, and the community got together because we had fire entities that never trained together, that didn't have the same equipment, that didn't even have the same communications. And they saw the need to have a joint effort when these fires come through here. And it wasn't until almost 10 years later, with the Dosey fire and the Dude fire, where we lost some firefighters, and things continued to evolve into a unified command. We have rigs that are all very similar. We do a lot of training within our fire districts and fire departments. So we're in a much better position. But where POWIC comes in is right now, we're looking at the interface. What was brought up here on the screen, what is the interface? It is that swath where we're up against the forests. And it's even extended into the inner city, but for the most part, we're focused on that perimeter and how we can alleviate the hazardous vegetation and create defensible spaces so that we have the time to evacuate. Okay? We live in the Southwest, and in talking to other firefighters from around, we're already in the 90th percentile, give or take a little bit, of being, of having a wildfire come through here. That means on that little door hanger, do we have that card here? I have one here. There's a door hanger that's ready, set, go, okay? We're already in the ready mode every single day. We should have our box to go in the garage right now, every one of us. My cars never get below half. I keep them half full. Okay? I don't keep a lot of stuff on my patios any longer. I bring them into their storage shed. So what we advocate is thinning out. We don't want to moonscape anybody's property. We've worked too hard for our homes. We love where we're at, but we're at jeopardy. Okay? So we create various zones within our properties to afford us more time. You start at your house and go out 5 feet, relatively clear. That's your hardscape, your walkways. If you're gonna have some plantings, I don't advocate for it, but if you are, they better be low and well hydrated. Put them on a watering system, okay? That from 5 to 30 feet, that's where you get a couple of bushes here and there. And there's brochures and all that to show you how that all goes. And then there's that 30 to 60 feet, okay, where you can start seeing trees, groupings of trees. But what's most important about all of that is the ability to keep your shrubbery low and your branches to your trees high. We refer to when they mix up together as ladder fuels. We want to keep that distance. In my property, I walk around my tree, and I usually wear a ball cap just like you over there. And I'm always looking down while I'm going, and sure enough, if I walk into a limb, that limb's coming down. That's my marker, okay? So all my trees look like trees, and they're junipers and pinyon pines just like everybody else. As a matter of fact, they're probably healthier now that they don't have all that undergrowth, okay? My shrubs are cut down pretty low. I try to keep them about my knees down. You don't need a tape measure. Just use something, knees and head. That's all I use around my house. Once you get beyond 100 feet, you're pretty much back to the natural forest. That's my rule of thumb. And most every picture you see that has a different aspect of whatever that house is, how it's designed, will show that very same pattern, okay? We also saw on the screen here some agencies. Those agencies, in my mind, are far away. You know, where's somebody from Prescott National Forest or the Department of Forestry and Fire Management, okay? Coconino National Forest, Prescott National Forest. Yavapai Firewise has our meetings the first Thursday of every month at the Office of Emergency Management at 1100 North Commerce. Those people are there every single month. They tell us what they're doing, and they tell us what's scheduled to be done, what's going to be prescribed burn. We know how many acres are prescribed burns based on various areas and historical data. They know where all the fires have been, and they know where they're going to concentrate, okay? Just recently on our side of the hill, I call it the dark side, you know, the Preston side, sorry, that's I'm a part of that. We had the Department of Fire, Forestry and Fire Management help within the common spaces of a given HOA, a Firewise HOA. So we do work together. They're just not on the other side of the fence. We work together, okay? So that's just a few points. I'm open for questions, or here's some cards. They're up here. Come see me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I'll make it fast because I'm probably the last thing between the drawing. So my name is Hoover Durham, I'm the fire chief of the city of Prescott. And first of all, I want to really thank you for being here. This is extremely important in this community. So 3 things I want to focus on today. First of all, this center is sometimes, I think, mistakenly seen just as a tribute center. The first word is learning, and that is the purpose of you being here today. And for us as the Prescott Fire Department, that is extremely important because as huge of a tragedy as we experienced in 2013, bringing purpose to that loss is extremely important to me personally, to all of our members, to the families of the 19. And so this is the way that we rebuild. And that is so important because the purpose of the Granite Mountain Hotshots when they were initially formed was not suppression. It was mitigation. It was to mitigate the risk around the Prescott area. And that work continues, and it is you being here that helps us do that. And that's actually the second thing I want to cover, which is a lot of times, especially when we talked about Altadena just recently, when we talk about Paradise, a lot of the things that get mentioned is, well, what about our fire department? Are the hydrants going to go dry? Do they have enough firefighters? Well, here is the absolute truth, and this is just the way that it is. We cannot build you a fire department big enough to fight a fire the size of what happened in Altadena. It is just not possible. That is just the reality of it. It's just like saying, can you keep me safe from all hurricanes, right? These are things that we have to do the work ahead of time, and we have to reach out with the community, and we need your help. Now, the really good news is, unlike hurricanes or earthquakes, wildfire, there's actually, in my opinion, a lot more stuff that you can do ahead of the wildfire to increase your chances of reducing your loss, reducing life loss, and also, and here's the reality as well, impacting how quickly a community can recover after a wildfire passes. Wildfires happen. We're going to have wildfires in Prescott this year. That doesn't mean the whole community is going to burn down, so please don't mistake what I'm saying here. It is a natural part of the landscape that we live in, and how we adapt to living in that environment is what's the most important thing. So a lot of times you have fear. The way you take that fear and make it reduce is action. And action is education, it's learning, it's Firewise, it's reaching out to Polwick, it's communicating with your neighbor, it's also emergency notifications. And the last thing I want to cover is this. A lot of you ask questions about how do I get out of my neighborhood? The Yavapai County Office of Emergency Management a couple years ago started a move towards a product called Genesis. It was originally called Zone Haven. So if you've seen any notifications or publications that say, do you know your zone? That's what I'm talking about. Now the city of Prescott, Chino Valley, even on the Verde side, we are all moving towards that platform. City of Prescott is ready to deploy that, and we're also getting ready to push a different emergency notification software out. So the best way that you can keep in tune with that is, Hugh already mentioned, the Yavapai County Office of Emergency Management, and then also very shortly, the City of Prescott is going to be delivering a lot of information in that same vein. The good news about that is this: all of these entities are coordinating and collaborating together. We don't want any confusion when there's an emergency. We don't want you as the citizen to wonder, where do I go for this information? And the last thing I'll double down on is something that Hugh just talked about at the beginning of this presentation. One thing that is absolutely unique about this area, I came just about 3 years ago from Colorado. This is the best intergovernmental relationship that I have ever seen. A month after I came, the Crooks Fire started. And I was wondering, well, how is this going to go? It took me about 15 minutes to figure out how it was going to go really well, because we all get along that well. And I could go into details, but I won't bore you with those. Just rest assured that the relationships we have with our federal partners, the relationships we have with our state partners, they are different here. And in part, it's because these folks live here in this geographic area. A lot of them grew up here. They care about this place just as much as you do. And so that does have a huge impact at the end of the day of not just how well we fight fire together, but how well we coordinate our suppression and mitigation efforts. And also, again, how well we're going to work after the fire does happen to help the community recover. It is truly, and I'm not just saying that because these people are in the room, it is truly world class around here, and you should be extraordinarily proud. The Prescott Fire Department has 5 fire engines on duty any given day. Now, if you think about that, right, is that enough? Well, it is enough for the daily workload, but we also have a Prescott National Forest engine in our Station 71. Central Arizona Fire and Medical Authority has one in Chino, and we respond to fires together. That does not happen in other places in the country the way that we do that. So that is something that is so unique about this community, and I couldn't be more proud of that collaboration, because that is a lot of the folks that you see here in this room, who we call the Eagles around here, that had the vision to make those relationships happen, why that is. And they've handed it off to our generation to make sure we continue to build on that relationship. And I'm happy to report we're doing exactly that. So with that, I think I've covered what I needed to cover, and the drawing, I think, is here. Oh, excellent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.